Damn, welcome back Ununite, and guys, Honglan is finally releasing this week, so I know a lot of you guys are excited and waiting for a pre-release analysis. Now this one will be a lot easier to talk about compared to Velanon's pre-release, because we actually have her gameplay available. She's literally an enemy in stage 16-15, and honestly her animations are fantastic. It's also up on YouTube. Her ultimate and her main look stunning, bro. It's really good. I'm personally gonna get her to Origin, but you don't need her Origin, right? Because end of the day, she is not a DPS unit, because she is a damage over time, which is not very good. But then for the most part, I like having at least one damage over time on my team, no matter what type, because damage over time does add a lot of damage, assuming the enemy has no cleanse. And if you are able to kill the enemy cleanser, then boom, that's a lot of damage, right? So if you're not familiar with Honglan's kit yet, we will get into it. Starting off with important mechanics we have to talk about, which is freeze. Now freeze is actually not like Pokemon where it is a status ailment. Well, technically it is, because it is cleansable, but for the most part what we're trying to say is that freeze doesn't hinder the enemy's movements. It doesn't freeze them in place. It doesn't prevent them from moving, right? So freeze is for the most part literally just a damage over time. The only other freeze units we have are Geo and Nini, right? So for Geo, her freeze is actually on Frigid Winter, and honestly this has very good coverage, right? If you've ever played Geo, the only issue with Geo is that she has 4 accuracy, so she'll miss us most of the time. But then the reason they pair so well together is because of Honglan's evasion decrease, which we'll also get into in just a bit. So yes, I already see her be going really well against with Geo. And Geo is actually also kind of a counter to Honglan, right? And we'll get into why in a bit, right? So when it comes to Nini, the thing with Nini is that she is a freezer and a silencer, right? But then all you need to know is that she does have freeze on her main, and it's literally just on her main. So that is the sad thing about this, right? Let me just double check. Yeah, it's literally just on her main. Now, is this a bad thing? Not really. I don't really see them pairing well together, because they're not even the same attribute. Now, Geo does go well, but then that's a different story, right? So the problem with damage over time is that Honglan literally has this on 3 of her skills: Ice Dragon, Glacial Shower, and Ice Dragon's Howling Fury. The problem with this is that it is cleansable, so a lot of her damage is locked out. Her ultimate actually does a decent amount of damage for a full screen ult, but again, the issue, it is cleansable, right? But then that is not the value of her ultimate, and we'll get into that literally in a bit, because we are going to talk about her similarities to, what's her name? Erusha. Now, the thing with Erusha is that her sub skills are pretty much the same as Honglan when it comes to utility, except Honglan's is like miles better. Because if you're not familiar, Erusha does do shock, and shock is also damage over time, right? The funny thing about shock is that if you're not familiar, Claire actually also has this, meaning that Claire and Erusha go well together. But why would you put Erusha in a Claire team? Like, respectfully, don't do that, right? So with Erusha's Injures Lightning, this does hope that the enemy is shocked, but then the thing is, Indria's Radiant Sphere is single target, and this stun is also single target. Now this is 4 seconds, which is longer than Honglan's, but then Honglan has potential to actually stun a lot more units, right? Now I really want to get into this now, but then honestly let's just start off with her ultimate. But yes, for the most part they are very similar, except Honglan is a million times better because of AoE for Erusha's single target. So when it comes to Honglan's ultimate, again, this is a full screen ult, one of the weaker ones in the game on impact, okay, on impact, but then that's not the utility. Again, freezing damage 70% times 4. For the most part, you probably won't get this off the enemy team, especially if they have units such as Talia, Prim, and Geo. Specifically Geo, because Geos is on her sub skill, which is actually crazy, right? So she's gonna proc that a lot of times, and you're not gonna want to fight against Geo with Honglan for the most part, unless you have other units to fix that issue. So 200% impact is not that good, but then again, this goes all the way up to possible 480% of her attack, which for the most part you should expect that to do a lot of damage, because she is a caster, and casters have some of the highest attack stats in the game. Pretty much all of them are over 60k for the most part. The biggest part about this is actually the mana decrease of 2500. For the most part, this is what most people agree on, is 25% of the enemy's mana pool, right? Now, this pretty much sets them back only one turn, but then this is for every single unit in the enemy team. 2500 is probably one of the biggest damage mana reductions we have in the entire game. Now, units such as Mephi are able to like get this back in one auto, but again, you're delaying their turn by one, right? So this is always a good thing to have. So again, good mana reduction, and this just pairs very well into her entire kit, right? Because her main also does mana reduction. It is weaker by 2000, but again, this is full screen, man. This shoots up to 390%, which on the main is very good, but again, locked out again by freeze damage. 130% on impact is not good, but again, this is full screen. So don't expect this to nuke anyone. But then you do have this mana decrease, which is very, very valuable. Just pairs well into her entire kit because she does have a lot of utility. So for Ice Dragon, the thing about this is literally similar to Mephistopheles' beam. If I can just find her very quickly. So the thing with Mephi's beams is that on Prism Ray and Code Overdrive, this is a 2-meter beam. Now Honglan is only 1.5 meters, but then it's just a big thing, no? Because again, it is a straight line end of the day, so anyone within that straight line for the most part is hit by this, right? Meaning that if the targets are not within 0.75 meters left and right of the center of this dragon, it won't inflict the freeze that her next skill, which is S2, will use, because her S2 is actually wider and a different coverage. Now, the good thing about this though is that this does last all the way up to 12 seconds and times 6, so there's 360 plus 120, 480%, which is really good, right? So I'm very, very happy with Ice Dragon. Now again, the 360% is cleansable, but then assuming no cleanse, wow, very, very, very good, right? So Freezing Strike, for the most part, like they averaged it out because Freezing Strike has like 0 damage. Okay, so stun duration, we'll talk about this mechanic. This one creates an ice pillar, deals damage equals to 110%. Now this becomes 130%. 2.5 meters area around the nearest enemy. Same with Ice Dragon, this is the nearest enemy. So for the most part, that enemy we're talking about will get frozen. Because with this thing lasting 12 seconds, this is actually way long enough, even at level 1, for Freezing Strike to be able to freeze the enemy. Because this inflicts freeze and this one consumes freeze. Sorry, it does not consume freeze. It uses that freeze to stun that enemy for 2.5 seconds. And again, this is AoE. So pretty much anyone that's hit with Ice Dragon and within this range of Freezing Strike will get stunned for 3.5 seconds. Which is really good because now we have mana reduction, we have CC, and we have her passive. Now to be fair, you don't need the stun, but worth noting that it is free. And the stun on another unit in your team is good because the more stun units we get, the better this game gets for us anyway, right? So lots of CC. So if you get units that you don't care if they get stunned or not, and you have like 5 of them eventually, then well, there you go. That's a net positive for your team composition, right? Again, this is similar to Erusha's skill rotation where she uses her shock damage first, which is Indra's Radiant Sphere. And then she will use Indra's Lightning to stun the enemy, but again, Honglan's is AoE instead. It shows she has potential to do more damage and stun more units, right? So now we'll look at her passive, which is actually bonkers, right? An important unit to talk about here is actually Lindsay, because Lindsay does get a potential 59 attack because of Acrobatic Fire, where she gets plus 30 for 18 seconds and an extra plus 20 for 6 seconds. So her base is actually 9. This shoots all the way up to 59, but Honglan flat out just says no thank you, and this just becomes 38. Now 38 is still a lot because the highest base we have in the entire game is on Talia, because Talia does have 17 base evasion, which you could still hit her a bit consistently, but then there are some times where RNG is not in your favor and you just get smacked across the face, right? So we'll be doing the speed calculations on Honglan very quickly, and we're not going to be talking about other units such as Renee that have a self buff because I don't care about Renee. Now when you're fighting a Vivienne, it's more fun to talk about this because they're both full screen speed modifiers, right? So for Vivienne, hers lasts 10 seconds and it's a 20% increase. The thing with Honglan, permanent as long as she's not dead. So this, again, multiplication is commutative, so it does not matter which order you multiply them at, right? So base speed is 100, meaning 4 seconds per attack, times 1.2 from Vivienne. Now the thing is, Honglan does reduce 14%, so wapam, right? But then what we're not 100% sure yet is that if Honglan takes it off the base or after all the speed modifiers, because a lot of the time when you see the debuff screen and buff screen, it does just say flat out minus 14. You don't really see minus 14%, right? So this could be the case where it's actually just minus of the base, where you get 106. But again, at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal either way, because for the most part, you'll be hitting at the same speed and neutralizing them, right? Now when you don't have an enemy Vivienne on the enemy team, this could potentially lead to the enemy attacking every 4.65 seconds, which if you last this the entire game, this is really, really good, because now you have Honglan that is very offensive with the minus evasion, meaning a lot of these units will be 10 times more useful because a lot of units have terrible accuracy such as Geo and Ayame. You also have this speed decrease, which is very, very defensive for the most part, because this means they will charge mana slower because they will have less turns in the same amount of time. You also have a mana reduction, and you have a damage over time and a CC. So her kit is looking very, very nice. Nothing busted end of the day, but then she is an amazing support, man. A very, very good. I'm very happy with her. And if the enemy does not have a cleanser, then everyone's just going to explode for the most part, right? So when you have teams such as Geo, because again Geo is fantastic with Honglan, Geo, Talia, Claire, Mephi, and Honglan, you will only get like a 3-piece bonus. But then, to be fair, what's that extra 5-10% attack defense going to do that you're missing out going to do if you can't even clear the stage, right? So Honglan is worth that opportunity cost, if that makes sense. Now what do I want to see for stats? Once we look at the other casters in the game, Ayame does have the highest, so everyone here has over 60,000 attack. Now I want to see Honglan only having 61k attack. I don't want her to get more, I don't want her to get less. The thing is, oh, by the way, this is after artifacts. The reason why I don't want her to get more is that she is very weak against Lindsay, because especially if you're fighting Lindsay's are level 200 origin on battlefield. Lindsay is human and Honglan is beast, meaning that Lindsay does 25% extra damage to her. And if Lindsay touches her with Avenging Sword, because Avenging Sword goes for the highest attack, if Honglan has too much attack, this could actually be a bad thing. Because if Lindsay uses this and then she targets Honglan, I could just see Honglan exploding, because again, she is a caster, right? And what do casters have? Very, very low attack. Very, very low defense. So I'm not expecting a lot of defense on her, right? Now, when it comes to HP, I want her to get mid 500k, but then honestly, I'm hoping for 600k, right? Now, when it comes to her crit rate, I want after artifacts for her to get 25%, very minimum, and she'll be good. Crit damage should be high as well after artifact. I'm expecting like no 70s, please. Around 80%. All right, plus minus 80%, right? Plus minus 5. So yeah. When it comes to accuracy, I do want to see 8, but then for the most part it doesn't matter, because as long as she's alive, speed decrease, evasion decrease of 21, it's just bonkers. When it comes to evasion, I want to see at least 10. All right, give me 10, please. Right? So again, assuming no speed buffs on the enemy, her passive does make the entire enemy's turns last 4.65 seconds each. The value of this is that this makes your attacks have priority for the most part. I'm not entirely sure yet if it's a 50-50 who stuns who first, right? Especially this is important when you have stun competitions, right? But then when there are two Mephies, mine and the enemies, whenever they use their dimensional lockdown on each other, I always get stunned first, bro. I'm not really sure. So having this is a good plus, apart from two things. One, the enemies will attack a lot slower. And two, they actually end up doing less damage because less speed means charging mana slower as well. So yes. So the important characters to think about are... By the way, how would you counter Honglan on the enemy team? Pretty much Geo. Let me just see Geo. Geo is really good because she is human-like. She doesn't really do damage, but then the thing with Geo is that she instantly cleanses Honglan's Ice Dragon the moment she gets it off, right? And then Geo has a cleanse on her sub-skill rotation, meaning that she will cleanse a lot of Honglan's damage over time. Now, is it good to use to center your team to counter one unit? No. But then this is important to keep in mind where if you're struggling and you can afford to use one unit. And besides, Geo is a really good unit, so I don't really see why you complain having her on your team anyway, right? Because Geo's sub-skill rotation is N2, then S1, which is this. I won't get into her entire sub-skill rotation, but then keep in mind that at the start of a game, Honglan will instantly get cleansed, right? Because Ice Dragon, she does this as N1 S1, S1 being Ice Dragon, meaning on the second turn, she uses this. Then Geo uses this literally right after. So boom, goodbye cleanse, goodbye freeze, right? Now we'll talk about the artifact. I love these substats on her artifact, right? The issue with the actual artifact though is that literally her only main sources of freeze outside of her S1 are her main, and meaning it won't synergize with sub skill 2, even though like sub skill 2 gets a lot of help from S1, right? So the good thing is that at the start of the match you pretty much get this, because assuming you won't fight any mana reductions, she will pretty much get her mana bar full at the end of her first turn, and just in time for her S1 to actually inflict freeze. Now, is this worth investing? Personally, I think yeah. Initially I was gonna say no, but then the stats on her artifact are so good that even though this is straight up rubbish, right, this could change if we get more info on mana. So does each unit have different mana pools or not? We need to keep that in mind. So the extra like 1-2% mana in this case isn't really that good. Like literally compared to Vivian's is just bonkers, right? So you look at this like restored mana, and you look at Honglan's, and you're like, oh, like how am I going to do that? But then again, enemy Vivian's won't have artifacts, so for the most part, alright. So I see her doing well in every form of content in the game. I personally would not use her ultimate in Labyrinth because it doesn't do as much damage as say Talia's. But then yeah, she works in every content in the game, so she does bring a lot of value to her account for the most part. So we'll talk about her compatible units very quickly, starting off with the beast units, which is she should be good with. Now my problem with Suni is that she is not very tanky compared to the other tanks. Again, she is tanky because she is a defender, but then she doesn't have enough defense increase or physical resistance increase, right? So no double resistance buff, which is the reason why Claire and Chloe are so tanky, bro. Now the reason why Adrian and Petra are still tanky at the end of the day is because they have defense increases. Literally, Adrian has a defense increase per unit around her, and she has a heal, right? While Petra has sustain on her main and so much defense buffs on her passive. Now I will change my mind if you have, Suni's artifact like maxed out, because she will heal a lot, but then she could get nuked is my issue, right? So when it comes to healers would depend on team, but for the most part Geo actually freezes, and her freeze is actually really good, right, in terms of coverage. Plus she is a healer, so boom, you already have a healer for your team. Then she has crit rate increase. And again, this is good because Honglan's artifact is plus 30% crit damage. Right? So Ayame. So she actually fixes Ayame's problem. Ayame's problem being low accuracy and helps Ayame control the entire enemy's mana, because again, if from our previous video we know that Encroaching Knight does do mana reduction over time, which is absolutely bonkers because this is every 2 seconds for 8 seconds, meaning this is times 4, 2000 mana for everyone afflicted. And with Honglan's mana reduction and speed reduction, it's just really good end of the day. So we'll look at the other beast units actually. Mika and Siha, well, at least you already have a 3-piece buff, but then the issue is who are the other 2 units going to be, right? Claire, really good because she's a beast healer, but again, the issue is she doesn't really need this defense buff. Oh wait, I forgot Clara has a cleanse, but then it's only to herself, right? So the issue with Clara is that she doesn't really need this defense buff because Honglan is going to play backline. But then if Clara works with your team, then go for it, right? Because at least you have 2 beast units already. Then when we think Ira, this is more AoE, so good stuff, right? Because Honglan is very good AoE. Adrian clumps up units, so more units will get hit by Ice Dragon. Then if units are close enough, Honglan's S2 will stun them, right? So that's really crazy. Now she also actually works really well with Lindsay, because a lot of the time people use Lindsay for stalling and actually doing a good amount of damage, because she does do good evasion, and every time she dodges, boom, crit damage plus 4%. By the way, this is getting nerfed. Again, it was a bug fix like Vivian, where this is actually just an attack increase, not a crit rate increase. But yeah, so good at stalling, good at damage. Lindsay's just a very good unit in general and just gets better over time. So is she worth the dupes? Oh wait, actually the last unit is Mephi. With Honglan's good crit damage and Mephi's plus a global crit damage and global defense decrease, they're just gonna go really well together. I'm very, very happy with that, right? Because I use Mephi a lot. I have her personally at Origin +2, so yeah, makes me happy. So she worth the dupes, definitely. All her skills skill off attack, and a unit you'd be using a lot because she is a support unit. You'd be using her a lot. Probably not every stage unless you want to, but then having more dupes is always good. Now there is the worry of other banners are coming up, and if you want to get Aki Origin and you're worried, then 80 or 200 pulse should be good on Honglan. I would personally recommend 200 because she does do a good amount of damage, although not being a DPS unit. Shoot up to, if you get her legendary plus, you can eventually get her to eternal plus with Father, right? Now, even if the next banner is Erica, you probably won't need her Origin, because let me just check. She is a supporter, so she is going to be a healer, pretty sure, because she is a fairy. Right? I'm just like 99% sure she's a healer. So, my final thoughts on Honglan. Is she going to be busted? Not busted, but she's very, 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 very good. If that makes sense. One of the better units we have in the game, especially when you look at the tier list. Where is she going to be in the tier list? I've got no clue, man. We don't really have her out yet. We don't have a perfect idea for sub-skill rotation, but we do have a good idea, if that makes sense. Is she worth your Everstones? Yes, definitely. She is worth having in your account because she does bring a lot of value. And she does help a lot of issues because she does have a really good use in this game that no other unit pretty much has yet. Closest being Erusha, but then nobody's gonna use Erusha. And the rest of her other skills are just a lot more useful. Literally, their only similarity is the point of her sub skills, right? But then again, Honglan's is better. So yes, guys, if you like that video, please do consider subscribing and join our Discord, because if you ever need help with me for anything or any other players, we are very active and we help each other out. And so yeah, it's been Uno Night, and I'll see you in the next one.